I think that you will realize from the list of panelists that we tried to select the panelists because of their involvement in the Sustainable Development Goals development. And we tried to be as diverse as possible regarding the stakeholders that are involved in this process. And we were keen also of having a political representative of the recipient side, and we were very keen to have this representative from Africa, actually, the continent with the most challenges. So I'd like to invite the panelists now. We have Ms. Ushi Aid, the chair of UNSGAB. Please, can you join the podium? We have Mr. Timayin from WaterAid. Is Timayin here? Yes. Please, can you join the panel? We have Mr. Guy Fradin, the governor of the World Water Council, who is representing Mr. Benedito Braga, the president of the World Water Council. We have Celia Blowell, she is already here, the deputy mayor of Paris and the head of Eau de Paris. And we have Mr. Baimastal, the Secretary General of AMCAO, the Council of Ministers of Water from Africa. Yes, go ahead. Sit here, I don't need to sit. Okay, thank you all for being with us. And okay, I will give the opportunity to the panelists. Whoever would like to give introductory remarks, you are more than welcome to do so. Then I'd like to have a couple questions for each of you, and then hopefully we will have some time to open the floor to discussions with the audience. So I'd like to start with Ushi. Ushi, would you like to start with some introductory remarks before I ask my questions?
Yeah, good morning. I'm very glad to be here as representative of the Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation to the Secretary General of the United Nations. And thank you very much, Faraj, for inviting me, and also for giving some very nice explanations vis-a-vis the relation of our board and GWOPA or WOPs, because you have nicely described that actually it was the initiative of our board that WOPs came into being. So I don't have to explain that any longer. And it's very nice to be here at your third Global Congress. And I will add, it might be the last time that I'm here as the chair of our board, because the mandate of our board will end because it was linked to the Millennium Development Goals. So as they are coming to an end next week, we are also wrapping up. But our last task that we could really fulfill was, together with others, to see that the Sustainable Development Agenda is really having a dedicated water and sanitation goal. And of course, this goes, as you was already explained, well beyond the access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. So it is really a very ambitious goal and an ambitious agenda that will be decided upon next week. But we should not forget that this was not undebated, because there are really a lot of people And well, some are the skeptics. They say this agenda is not achievable. And there are others, the idealists, that they think it's not going far enough, yeah? So we still hope that it is being decided, but what combines them all, the skeptics and the idealists, is that water and sanitation as a global goal is now a global challenge. It's not only geared towards developing countries, it also addresses us, Spain, Germany, you know, the OECD countries, and the main objective is poverty reduction, but poverty reduction without plundering the earth. So it's the development and environment agenda that is combined. So it is very timely that your Congress brings us together to discuss this. Of course, I just want to mention two problems that I see are still ahead of us. And one is that we have to learn lessons from the past, and this is related to the indicators. As many of you will know, the world was told in 2012 by the UN that the target for safe drinking water in the framework of the Millennium Development Goals was met. But this was announced because the wrong indicator was applied. You know, the indicator was access to improved water sources. The indicator was not safe drinking water. And these are two different things. So if we are not really measuring what we are supposed to measure, then we come out with flawed data, and this is politically a disaster. Yeah? The second thing I want to mention is that we have currently a biased reporting. The bias lies that at the very moment, the rural emphasis or the rural challenges are overemphasized. And I was very, very happy to hear the message of Jean-Claude, yeah, who said the urban side, we have to focus more. And this is at the moment the case that growing urban crisis in drinking water and sanitation is not enough given light, although it was acknowledged by the Secretary General in 2011 already. I will come later on, I guess that this will be the discussion, what is the role of the operators? And I will leave it to the discussion then. I just wanted to give some highlights of the things that we as a board still think has to be shed light on, and we are not really at the end of the tunnel. And having a UN declaration next week, that's only the beginning, yeah? It's not the end of the task. Okay,
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, you know, this will be my follow-up question to you. I mean, you initiated GWOPA, you initiated the WOPs movement, and you have been, as UNSGAB, I mean, and you have been very active in advocating for the water goal and in the process of the development of this goal. So what linkages do you see between these two issues? What's the linkages? Yeah.
Well, if you look very closely, what are the elements of the water and sanitation goal? It is universal access to water, sanitation and hygiene. It is wastewater treatment, recycling and reuse. It is freshwater quality and water resource management. It is water use efficiency and sustainability and the protection of water-related ecosystems. This is the water goal, but we have also water-related targets in other goals. For example, in the city goal, which is number 11, there we have a target related to water and disaster. So I think, it is obvious that water operators are having a clear task and are challenged to implement so that these targets are being met. Yeah? And of course, they do also have to deliver good data, because what we have seen, so it's not only, you know, to deliver the services, but it's also that the operation itself, the utilities, also have to apply to sustainability criteria. Yeah? So it's the service delivery, it's the efficient operation itself, and it might also be a challenge to have good data collection. Of course, the countries in which you are operating, they have to give you the real good framework so that it is clear that your capacity is being developed and that the financing is sustainable, and this is sometimes very crucial. Indeed. So I think there is lots of challenges for the operators in order to be part and parcel of the whole family, of the water and sanitation family, to reach the 2030 agenda.
Okay, that's definitely will be a very hot topic of discussion during the Congress. But before I leave you to another panelist, there is a question which is, of course, itching. I mean, UNSGAB is basically going to be dissolved by the end of this year. So do you have any parting message of UNSGAB?
Yes, we have very, I mean, I'm not a practitioner, yeah? We have advised the Secretary General. So, of course, having helped to get WOPs growing, it is very satisfying to me to see that something that was initiated by our board is really growing. So I congratulate you. So Thank you. I want to say first. Second, maybe I will just have two messages. And this is, the first is that, of course, you are all dealing with water in a local environment, and you have to have local solutions to your problems. This is without saying. But water is a global challenge, because if water and sanitation is not dealt with, then we are facing a global water crisis. I just mentioned the Ebola crisis. Yeah, it was based on sanitation questions, but it is a global crisis. Trading virtual water is a global issue, and you are part of a global family, so it is a global issue. The second is that what we are now having is that water and sanitation has raised to a UN agenda, yeah? But there is not, on the level of the UN, there is not a platform where UN member states can be held responsible whether they are implementing in their national policies water and sanitation policies so that they are helping to reach the Sustainable Development Goal until 2030. So there is no platform related to water and sanitation themes. There are regional platforms, like you have MCOW, for example, and the African Union. But that is what our board would like to see, that we have an international thematic platform where water and sanitation is being discussed with member states, with civil society, with all the stakeholders, as we have platforms for other topics, but we don't have it yet for water and sanitation. Thank you.
I hope that the responsibility of the member states, you know, being set in stone would be the next step, hopefully, in the future. Thanks very much. Let me move to this side of the panel and to ask Timeen, my friend, sorry, I forgot your family name. Can you say it here?
It's a challenge to call that, actually. Is this working?
No.
Okay, yeah, Uwe Jamomiri.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Timeen, you are representing WaterAid, okay?
Yes.
And you have been very much involved in the UN Open Working Group that worked on the development of the SDGs. So can you please give us briefly the story of the development of the MDGs and how they, you know, came to this stage.
Thank you very much, Faraj. Good morning, everybody. I want to congratulate the Global Water Operators Partnership on your 6th, 7th anniversary and your 3rd Congress.
Thank you.
We've come a long way from where it started. But to come to the question at hand, I think that the question of the Open Working Group, or the SDGs as we know them today, goes back maybe over 10 years. In the sense that the water sector, in fact, maybe more than 10 years, the water sector realized in South Africa in 2000 that sanitation was not part of the MDGs, and rallied around and lobbied and were able to get sanitation into the process. And suddenly the realization started coming to the sector that water and sanitation is actually not prioritized. And there are a lot of campaigns that have been going on, one of which, of course, is the UNSGAP process that led to WOPA. The other is the process that led to the formulation and adoption of the right to water. And that, was a major milestone in the story of water and development. And because of those awareness raising and the challenges that the rest of development started to face and to realize that water and sanitation was important, the conversations around water and sanitation became a very big issue. WaterAid has been involved in all of these processes, and one of the main things that we realized is that post-2013, when actually the conversation as to setting up an open working group started, there were various campaigns around the question of what happens after the MDGs. In fact, how do we achieve the MDGs itself? We weren't at the point where we could achieve the MDGs. So there were various campaigns. We worked with several other groups. I remember that in 2011, the chairman of WaterAid in Sweden, Jan Eliasson, was appointed as the Undersecretary General of the United Nations for Water and Sanitation, which was something that opened the doors to the chambers of the UN and to influence even much more strongly. So we got involved in that process, and one of the things we did was to set up in ourselves with other NGOs a campaign that we called Make It Happen. Make It Happen being around the promises that governments have made, particularly the African governments, to deliver services to their citizens are realized. We worked along with others also to try to set up the Sanitation and Water for All Alliance, and partnerships, rather. So that's what's now called the SWA. All of those processes were building on the momentum that led to the UN 68th General Assembly in 2013 agreeing to set up the Open Working Group for Water and Sanitation. Prior to that, there was in 2012, the meeting, the Rio Plus 20 meeting at the UN. That meeting agreed certain steps. One of the things that they agreed to do was to begin a process to help us identify what will come out of what will happen after 2015, so the post-2015 process. It also agreed to talk about options and strategy for financing development and water in particular. Some other issues were also on the table, like small island states development, reform of UN Environment Program for water resource management, and a few other issues. But for the Open Working Group itself, that became a watershed. And the watershed was basically to begin now to see what do we need to put in place to make water and sanitation a central goal of development. Fortunately, at that meeting as well, it was agreed that the world will want to eradicate poverty. And that decision meant that for you to eradicate poverty, of course, you must deal with the basic fundamentals. And one of the basic fundamentals is water, it's sanitation. So the Open Working Group had a big mandate. One of the things that have been mentioned today is the fact that water is central to almost all of the MDGs, to poverty, to hunger, to gender, to health, to education. almost everything that we can think about has water embedded in it. And the recognition of that centrality of water made it even much more necessary for the Open Working Group to work in that direction. So the Open Working Group worked for about 18 months to September 2014. And by September 2014, they had come out with some broad stroke list of goals and targets of what they would like to see. And central to that was the fact that water and sanitation should become a goal in itself. And the UN accepted that in September 2014. In fact, the Open Working Group, working through member states, set out a framework. And there was some criticism of that framework at that time through what the people thought that the questions around governance and the focus of the sets of goals that were identified then were not smart enough. But that happened. They were adopted at that point, and that then passed on to an intergovernmental panel to look at. And only in August this year, did that panel actually adopt something slimmer, working with the Troika, that becomes what we now will describe as the SDGs, where water is a bit slimmer. I think we have, as we know, 17 goals, and water is a central goal, goal 6 of that process.
I have another question for you regarding your organization's role. I mean, we all very know that your organization is very active in WASH altogether. So what do you think, or what's your perspective about including issues such as water quality and wastewater management in the goal, and the governance issues altogether?
Okay, WatchAid has been for about 35, 37 years, and we pride ourselves as an organization that focuses centrally on drinking water and sanitation. But we do recognize that drinking water and sanitation will not be if you don't have the water resource itself. Yeah. If you don't have the bulk water to supply, you won't have drinking water. Yeah. If you allow your waste to go into the water system, then you won't also have the water itself to drink, or the water itself will be too expensive to treat for you to drink. So we welcome the extended goals very much. We welcome the goals, particularly on water efficiency. Mm-hmm. We know that for the sector, we are told that we need about 22 billion investment annually to achieve the MDGs. We are also told that only about 12 billion goes into the sector from donors, from governments, from people, households. But the worst case of that is that about 4 billion is lost through unaccounted for water. That's part of the inefficiencies of the sector currently. Yeah. And that's something that we almost address. So we appreciate that is part of the process. And of course, we also campaigned ourselves for water to be part of the indicators for education. So we are glad that that's part of what is listed. We campaigned for it to be part of what's available in health centers. A recent study we just concluded have shown that about 60% of our health centers in Africa do not have water and sanitation. Wow. And so mothers are giving birth in hospitals without water. Family members have to come with jerry cans of water to the hospital, to the maternity wards. That's it's unthinkable, but that's the reality of the situation. So we appreciate the extended goals. Much more importantly, we appreciate the extended goal on wastewater treatment. Yeah. It's something that we have struggled with, that we have in several countries, not only in Africa or Asia. We have water utilities that only deal with drinking water and do not deal with wastewater treatment. We were told in Stockholm that in China, for example, of every $12 that goes into wastewater treatment, only $1 goes into sludge management. So that's China with all its investments and large-scale investments happening these days. Yeah. Compare that to South Asia, where there's scarcity of funds, or Africa, where there's scarcity of funds. Several of the toilets either are pits, even in the cities, or septic tanks. they never get moved. WaterAid has worked in some slums trying to see what we can do with decentralized waste management systems in Bangladesh, in Tanzania, in India. It's possible to put these things in place, but our research have also shown that we still need large-scale investment to treat our sludge, to treat the waste from human beings. It's possible to keep them in the soil in the rural areas, but when the city size is beginning to grow to a certain extent, then it becomes impossible to keep pit latrines in human settlements without moving them away for treatment.
Thank you very much for this briefing, actually. Let me move back to the other side of the panel and to ask you, Guy, about the World Water Council. You've been very supportive for the water goal as well. And I would like to ask you about the role that you envision for the next World Water Forum in Brasilia, for example, on the way to the implementation of the SDGs altogether and the targets of this water goal.
Merci Farage. Permettez-moi d'abord de présenter les excuses de Benedito Braga, qui n'a pas pu être présent aujourd'hui et qui m'a demandé de le représenter, ce que je fais avec énormément de plaisir, comme il y a 2 ans d'ailleurs, au précédent congrès de WOPA. Nous allons donc très probablement avoir, à la suite du vote de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, une série d'objectifs du développement durable, parmi lesquels donc un objectif numéro 6 qui sera spécifique sur l'eau. Revenons un tout petit instant quand même sur les objectifs du millénaire qui ont précédé ces objectifs de développement durable, pour rappeler que dans cette thématique, dans ce secteur, il y avait donc un objectif sur l'accès à l'eau potable, un objectif sur l'accès à l'assainissement. Et en anglais, c'est Basic Sanitation. Alors, je vais écouter avec beaucoup de plaisir ce que vient de dire le représentant de WaterAid sur le lien indissoluble, on pourrait dire, entre l'accès à l'eau potable et l'accès à l'assainissement. Et la nécessité, évidemment, de traiter l'assainissement dans toute sa mesure. Et non pas seulement, évidemment, de doter les populations, et notamment les plus pauvres, de toilettes, de latrines, de la capacité, évidemment, d'avoir cet accès à l'assainissement de base, mais aussi, ce qui est une nécessité, je dirais, de dignité humaine, mais aussi, derrière, d'assurer la collecte et le traitement de ces eaux usées, que ce soit d'ailleurs du fait des pollutions organiques, bien sûr, mais aussi des pollutions chimiques. Et c'est bien ça qui, ensuite, fait progresser, évidemment, l'amélioration, la qualité de la ressource, et donc pas d'eau potable sans assainissement. L'histoire, dans tous les pays, montre combien, lorsque l'assainissement a été défaillant, eh bien, les maladies, les problèmes économiques et les difficultés conséquentes ont surgi. Alors, ces objectifs du millénaire, ils étaient ce qu'ils étaient. Ce qu'il faut noter quand même, c'est qu'ils ont été atteints, et même plus qu'atteints. Donc, c'est quand même encourageant pour le futur, puisque dans les même moins des 15 années qui étaient prévues, plus d'1 milliard de personnes supplémentaires ont eu accès à l'eau potable, et donc que nous avons fait face finalement aussi à l'augmentation de la population. Donc, le directeur de UN Habitat rappelait les chiffres de prospective sur la démographie mondiale et sur l'importance de ces populations qui vont se développer, et en particulier dans les villes. Voilà, malgré l'importance de ces chiffres, je pense que nous pouvons nous dire que nous pouvons faire face à ce défi et résoudre la question de l'accès à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Alors, les objectifs de développement durable, derrière, il faut se féliciter et féliciter surtout ceux qui y ont travaillé et ceux qui ont produit finalement cette série d'objectifs de développement durable qui donne, me semble-t-il, plus d'ampleur, plus de vision intégrée et large des questions de développement durable, qui intègre beaucoup plus et qui fait le lien entre, et ça a été dit plusieurs fois, entre les différentes politiques dans lesquelles l'eau, évidemment, est à la fois centrale et reliée à l'ensemble de ces politiques. Il y a 17 objectifs. Je crois que la plupart, ça a été dit, sont reliés à la question de l'eau. Il y a l'objectif 6 qui comporte 8 sous-objectifs, mais il y a bien sûr l'objectif 12 qui concerne les océans, la conservation des eaux marines et la protection de ces zones. Il y a bien entendu l'objectif 11 sur la ville, et on y reviendra sur la ville, l'objectif d'avoir une ville résiliente, mais il y a bien sûr les objectifs sur l'énergie, sur la santé, sur la sécurité alimentaire, sur la consommation, sur l'égalité des sexes, puisque souvent, et la plupart du temps, on le sait, dans beaucoup de pays, ce sont les femmes et les enfants qui sont dédiés à la corvée d'eau. Donc, on a une gamme, finalement, d'objectifs et de sous-objectifs tout à fait, me semble-t-il, pertinent pour progresser notablement dans ce vaste projet qui est quand même, finalement, je crois que Ushiaïd l'a dit, celui de diminuer, d'éradiquer la pauvreté mondiale et les inégalités sur cette planète. Dans ce contexte, quelle est la position du Conseil mondial de l'eau ? Le Conseil mondial de l'eau, depuis longtemps, a soutenu évidemment cette vision intégrée, cette vision du lien entre les politiques, ce souci de travailler à la fois sur eau énergie, sur eau sécurité alimentaire, sur eau santé, sur eau développement économique, sur eau potable et assainissement, comme je le disais. Ça, c'est la première chose. Et donc, son souci sera dans la réalisation de ces objectifs que cette vision transversale soit respectée, soutenue, qu'il soit gardé en mémoire par l'ensemble des acteurs, qu'ils soient responsables des politiques, des stratégies ou plus précisément, ce qui nous occupe aujourd'hui, des actions de mise en œuvre, parce que c'est bien dans la mise en œuvre de ces solutions et des actions que va résider finalement la réalisation de ces objectifs. Alors, je voudrais appeler votre attention sur un point important, c'est que le travail finalement conceptuel est loin d'être fini, car la liste des objectifs est arrêtée, devrait être votée, je pense, à l'Assemblée générale. Mais derrière, il y a la question, Ushiaïd l'a évoqué, des indicateurs. Et que selon les indicateurs qu'on retient, on a plus ou moins de précision et plus ou moins de chances d'atteindre l'objectif finalement qu'on s'est fixé. Et cette question des indicateurs, elle est fondamentale. Elle est aujourd'hui en train de se traiter, c'est-à-dire qu'en fait, l'adoption des indicateurs interviendra, je crois, au printemps prochain. Mais les éléments qui vont constituer chacun des indicateurs qui va nous permettre évidemment de cibler l'atteinte, c'est en cours de travail et ce sera essentiel parce que c'est à partir de ça qu'on pourra réaliser. Donc le Conseil mondial de l'eau, qui a déjà travaillé au cours du 6e forum sur la question des solutions, qui a travaillé au cours du 7e forum sur la question des engagements et qui continuera à le faire dans le 8e forum, je vais y revenir, Farage, rapidement, est très soucieux évidemment de l'aspect concret et du lien qu'on fera entre politique, stratégie et mise en œuvre. Alors à cet égard, le travail nous semble très important, tout particulièrement sur la mise en œuvre des objectifs 6 et des objectifs 11 que j'évoquais tout à l'heure sur la ville résiliente. Et évident, encore une fois, John Clauss le disait tout à l'heure, les 2 tiers de la population sont dans des grandes villes ou dans des villes ou des grandes villes. Et évidemment, C'est-à-dire la question de l'énergie, de l'eau potable, de l'assainissement et les liens qu'il y aura avec le développement durable sont fondamentaux. Donc l'interconnexion entre ces objectifs est tout à fait essentielle. Et donc les opérateurs, alors au sens très large, non seulement les opérateurs publics et privés qui sont ici dans le cadre de WOPA, mais les acteurs, je dirais, les stakeholders, ont cette responsabilité de garder en tête l'interconnexion nécessaire entre ces différentes politiques, donc, et qui doivent se traduire finalement dans les stratégies nationales et locales. Et donc les collectivités territoriales et les collectivités locales auront un rôle absolument essentiel, bien sûr, puisque dans ces politiques, c'est bien les pouvoirs publics qui restent évidemment maîtres d'ouvrage et de la conception et de la mise en œuvre de ces politiques. Et donc, il faut absolument que cette vision d'ensemble soit bien ancrée et que donc les conseilleurs, bien entendu, et les opérateurs, c'est-à-dire ceux qui sont ici dans cette salle, aient conscience de cette question-là. Alors, qu'est-ce qui va se passer? Alors, et dernier point, simplement sur les messages qui concernent aussi alors UN Habitat, ça a été évoqué par John Claus dans Habitat 3. Il est très important, évidemment, qu'il y ait un focus sur la question eau, assainissement dans la ville. Et donc, nous serions très contents que l'agenda d'Habitat 3 récupère cette question et que UN Habitat, dans ses policy units, insère la question de l'eau. Sur le forum, simplement un dernier mot, Farage, sur le forum du Brésil, donc, qui se prépare. Il aura la lourde tâche, finalement, d'être confronté dans cet énorme échange qui se déroule tous les 3 ans à cette question de la mise en œuvre des objectifs de développement durable. Ce sera certainement le point central. C'est l'objectif de tout le monde. C'est ce qui va nous servir d'objectif intégrateur. Et donc, ce qui a été fait dans les forums précédents, on a évoqué Mexico déjà avec le démarrage du processus collectivité territoriale et régionale, ce qui a été fait à Marseille avec la plateforme des solutions et les échanges sur les solutions, ce qui a été fait en Corée avec les engagements et ce qui va se faire et qui devront être présentés. Les bilans devront être montrés au moment du forum de Brasilia. Et bien sûr, de nouveau, la question des opérations concrètes, des échanges entre acteurs, des échanges sur les solutions sera sur la table dans l'optique de la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable. Merci.
Thank you very much, Guy, especially for touching on the relationship between the water goal and the urban goal, and especially through the resilience and climate change issues and urbanization altogether. And I would like to recall our cooperation with the Council on convening the local authorities in session in Korea, and we hope to continue our cooperation on this for the forum and furthermore to Habitat 3 also as well. I'd like to move to Celia, who is representing the city of Paris and Eau de Paris, a local authority and an operator together, actually. So can you tell me your perspective, Celia, about the Sustainable Development Goal, the water goal, especially that the Millennium Development Goal talked about, or the Water Millennium Development Goal, it talked about access, it talked about the South. While over here now, with the SDGs, we are going more universal, and we are talking about, North and South together. Mm-hmm. So can you give me your perspective about that?
Yes, I'm going to try to. Hello, everybody. I want to also say I'm very glad to be with you today. It's true I have a particularity. I'm speaking here as a representative of a local authority, as a chairwoman of a public water company, but also I have to say as the representative of the European Association of Public Operators. So that makes a lot of things. Not that I'm changing my mind if I speak as the representative of a local authority and sometimes as the chairwoman, but just to say that all these aspects are definitely very linked, and that today I think we can say operators, water operators are much more than pipe managers, and they are definitely also being part of developing a vision for water management anywhere in the world. I just wanted, before answering your question, if you can let me just say a word, that being a local actor, I think now cities, we are definitely at the heart of all the 21st century issues that we're all talking about. Cities are gathering 50% of the population. We're going to be 70% in the future. We are at the sources of 70% of GHG emission. And we are also the causes of the scarcity of the natural resources, among which water is central. So all of this makes many different challenges about water issue. But if we are at that center as being responsible of all these changes, we have also an important role to play. I think because we have tools, you were talking about it, to implement that goals of sustainable development. It's true that it's also a joke among cities network to say we have the tools, we act actually, and states and parties are talking. So we have to make that link even stronger. We are working on relevant territories, which helps to implement that politics. And we have that linked that Janet was talking in her introduction speech. We have a strong link, even if it has to be improved with the citizens. So it's a strength to face all this question we're talking about, because we can have that specific regard on the environmental, social, and economical aspect at the same time. It helps us to have that integrated way of looking at it. And actually, I would say, and to answer your question, I also agree that now all this question concerns everybody, as Yushi said. And that, we were switching to something that even the North is concerned. I was completely struck by what happened in California, actually, these days, because we always talk about vulnerable countries, but when you see California, really modern and rich states that have a restriction on the water supply, and also consequences of the climate change, the drought they experience, are also the causes of the big fires they have these days. And on the other side, you have a policy that was definitely non-sustainable. That is the causes of all of that. So we definitely have to have a global approach on all these things. I have to say that in Paris, we have started to do policies in that sustainable development dynamics. As I say, like cities are on the front line to that kind of things. But I think now we have a real need for a global governance. And I think the new SDGs to be adopted are really important for us to go forwards, to get, because you were saying, local authorities are the ones to implement, but now we need even more legal frameworks, technical frameworks, but also finance to go and implementing these SDGs in North as in our international cooperation. But also, I think these SDG, if they are adopted, are going to allow us to go forwards in the reflection we're having on a widespread aspects, because as the executive director of UN Habitat said in the introduction, I think we need now to question even more the model of development we are living in. Talking about urbanism, agriculture, and that is true as well in the urban area, that in the rural area. And I think if we want to develop sustainable policy management for water, we need to have all that wide water aspect in the next years.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Definitely. Legal frameworks and finance are a big must and big prerequisites for the implementation of these SDGs. Let me move to BIMAS. BIMAS, you were kept to the end of this panel actually on purpose, because you represent the political stakeholder on the recipient side, and from the continent, from Africa, the continent which faces, the biggest challenges. So, based on all what you've heard, and on your experience, of course, what do you think, how can the SDGs be met in Africa? Especially that the MDGs haven't been met yet. So please give us your perspective on that.
Thank you very much for us. And I suspected that there's a catch that I was jumped until for the last. And yeah, but I'll answer.
I explained well.
Yeah, you explained well. But when I look over there and see the constituency that I represent, Africa, and most of the participants here, I know very well that even if I'm not here, they will answer your question. Because in Africa, I think we have done, I would say, I'm proud to say that we have done better than the other regions. When they started talking about post-2015, we in Africa did not react, but we were very proactive, and we went to the meeting in Monrovia that was co-chaired by Salif Johnson to put up a case for water and sanitation. And I remember some of the regions were saying that's a no-no. Some of the development were saying that's a no-no, we do not need that. So it was a continuous lobbying, of course, with partners to make sure that there is a dedicated goal on water and sanitation, because for Africa, we have underlined the importance of water as a, what different motor de development, as a nerve center for development, that without water, we cannot in our development. Our heads of states have said that for Africa, economic growth rate to move from 4% at the moment to 12%, we have to develop 4 things. That's what they call the PIDA, Program Development for Africa. Infrastructure, water, energy, transportation, and IT to combine. So that was done way back in Kampala in 2011. So water has been in the center. For that, we moved on in Africa to make sure that it happened. So under the umbrella of AMCAWA, which is the African Ministers' Council on Water, the only one in the world, because it has an autonomous secretariat, and I'm the executive secretary. Others may have secretariat, but dedicated only for the continent, platform for ministers to meet and have a common platform on water and sanitation. And now we even have champions like heads of states. As we speak now, yesterday I was contacted for the first time, by a few heads of states to say that next week they are going to be in New York. And we are going to make statements. Can you send us what we are most important for us now is water? We want to focus on water in our statement in New York. This is the first time it's happening. Before, they'll talk generally on poverty, on energy, but for water. So I'm very proud that the political momentum that Africa has generated for water to move to the top of the agenda. It was there, but it was just being talked about, nothing being done. In May last year, the ministers met in Dakar and had what they call the Dakar Declaration on Water. And recently, they met in Dakar again, had what they call the Ngor Commitment on Sanitation. Ngor is a Wolof word that means dignity. We said, so the commitment is commitment on sanitation dignity. And I remember, and I would like to thank Ushiite. When I started interacting with Ushi, I think was in South Africa when we had our Africa Water Week, and said that we should start thinking of sanitation not something bad, but it's something good. Let's look at it, the positive side of it. It's not something that we shouldn't talk about. When you talk about toilet, people don't want to talk about it, and sorry to use this word, but they will say, shit is good. And we started using that. And today, everybody is talking about it, trying to make money out of it. And in Senegal, when we say Ngor Declaration, giving it dignity, in which now we have the Ngor Declaration in Africa and the Dakar Declaration, which we are going to combine, and telling the world at the UN, say, Africa hasn't waited. We had a platform for the implementation of the SDGs. When the SDGs is not a matter of if, it's going to be endorsed. When it's endorsed, people clap. After that, and so what? Africa is ready because we have a platform. Ngor and Dakar commitment is the platform of Africa to implement it on the ground. As everybody said, it's a global challenge, but it's a local solution. Implementation is at the local level. The UN will put us together, we strategize, but it's at the local. That's where in Africa, as the region, that's the role we've been playing to move the things, to have things on the ground that tomorrow our children, grandchildren wouldn't be saying that you've been talking for the last 15 years and there's nothing on the ground, because we want to make sure that there is no more open defecation. We want to make sure that everybody has access to clean, potable water. It's a shame in Africa that only 3% of our water resources is being utilized. Only 3%. And 75% of that is for agriculture, 12% for industry. So what is left for drinking water? So now it's time that we put our priorities right and give it the political push that it needs and have all partnership. That's where you come in and the operators. The SDG is all about partnership. It's too big for any organization or any sector to think that they can do it alone. Even at the local level, at AMCA, as we speak, we need to work with the operators. 2 days ago, I was in Paris, Aquafed, the same thing with local operators. How are we going to work with the local operators to make sure that there is action on the ground? Because they are the ones on the ground. We develop the policies. That's what I'll have to say.
Thank you very much. And I am sure that everybody is happy to hear about the political commitment in Africa that is definitely necessary to achieve the SDGs on the continent. Okay, it's already 11 o'clock. And I have to give 1 minute closing remark for each of the panelists. I think I have to apologize from the audience, both in this room and in the other room, because we will not be able to open the floor for questions. The congestion at the registration, obliged us to eat the question times. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for the other room as well. Let me give 1 minute closing remarks for each of the panelists, and then I think there is a couple minutes for the logistical announcements, and then we go to the coffee break. I started the comments from Ushi. Let me start the closing remarks from Timeyin over here. Please keep it to 1 minute.
I will try. I think that what I would say is that there are still things to be done. So this is not the end of the SDGs. We're just going to be adopting or agreeing that next week. So I think that one of the things that will come from this is that each country will be required to develop an SDG strategy. If you were around in the 2000s, which I believe we were all there, most countries developed the poverty reduction strategy papers. We're going to be doing something similar for the SDGs. And I think that this is somewhere utilities and operators can be involved. Governments will form committees. I would like for our utilities to be involved in this process. We've never really been involved in political issues before. So the question of how to implement these policies and commitments of governments sometimes fall down the crack. The other thing that I think will be important is that this is mostly about sector strengthening. It's about strengthening those persons who actually deliver services, urban and rural utility agencies. And we cannot leave that to chance. So in the conversations to next spring for the adoption of the indicators, I will encourage operators to get involved with their governments and to get involved in the process to be very key. Because we've been talking mostly about outputs. It's much more than outputs. If I ask you how many staff ratio do you have that can really deliver the work you do, you may have challenges because you don't have the right structures in place. If governments don't know about these things, they will never fund it.
Thank you.
I'll stop it there.
Bye, Mas. You will not be left to the end this time.
Okay, as he said that there is unfinished business from the MDG that needs to be carried to the SDGs. But one thing that is very important, and Uzi has mentioned, is the indicators. We have to have the right indicators. In Africa, we have what we call the M&E project that we are starting, working with international partners to develop with the international partners the right indicators so that we can report annually to our heads of state. Secondly, is at the UN level, but also in Africa, what AMCA is doing that we are trying to get at the AU summit in January for AU heads of state to make a commitment on implementation of the SDG at the continent and peer review, as Usi was saying, that there is no platform of reporting, but Africa is trying to do that, and we hope that that will pass in January.
And you talked about lobbying in your introductory remarks. I want to lobby for the African operators to have more political voice in the continent as well. Celia.
Yes, thank you. I would say two things as a conclusion. I think if we want to go to SDG implementation, we first have to even more base our action on really strong values. And I think that are the values of the public run company that are based on governance, transparency, accountability, that we based our action on non-profit actually dynamic, that we address properly the environmental as much as the social issues, and also that the international solidarity program that we develop as operators, as city, reflects all these values. And I'm thinking that much about ability, construction, and the need of more public-to-public partnership. That was my first point. Then I wanted to stress, and that I think this is really important on the road to COP21, that I think water should be even more in an integrated policy, because 21st century we have to face climate change, we have to face the scarcity of natural resources, we have to face what you said about the necessity to question the balance between the different uses, which needs lots of political debates that are not easy to open. And also there is a huge need for solidarity. I'm thinking that we say that climate change in the next 20 years are going to have, we're going to see 60 million of people that will have to move from the place they live. So I think all of these are the conditions that we have to follow if we want to implement real and efficient SDGs goals.
Thank you. Guy?
Oui, je voudrais souligner un point à propos du changement climatique, puisque en 2000, lorsqu'on a décidé des objectifs du millénaire, c'était quelque chose qui était largement sur la table, mais qui maintenant, depuis 15 ans, s'est énormément précisé après tous les débats qu'il y a eu. Donc aujourd'hui, on est devant cette perspective assez certaine du réchauffement. Et comme vous le savez, la COP 21, qui se déroule à Paris à la fin de l'année, va essayer de faire avancer les engagements des pays là-dessus. De la même manière que les acteurs de l'eau se sont battus finalement avec succès pour que dans les objectifs de développement durable, il y ait un objectif spécifique sur l'eau et que l'eau soit retenue comme un élément essentiel, de la même manière, les acteurs de l'eau, et notamment le Conseil mondial de l'eau, se bat pour que, au niveau de la COP 21, il y ait un focus, une cible spécifique sur l'eau, sur la thématique eau, et que dans le futur, cette thématique eau soit traitée évidemment de façon importante, sinon centrale, dans la question du changement climatique et de la lutte contre le changement climatique.
Thank you very much. Ushi.
Thank you. It is interesting that my speakers before me entered into the discussion of linking water and climate. This is exactly what I also wanted to say, because I'm not a water person, so I'm a politician, and when I entered in this UNSCAP board as a member, I have always wondered how come that the climate community is so dynamic and the water community doesn't get off the ground, you know, and attracting globally so much attention. And I never understood this, because if I see you all, I mean, there are so many people dealing with water. And I think now the time has come that water is now one of the SDGs, that we as the water community should join hand and say, okay, let us invade the climate debate, yeah, and let us take it over even, because water is on one end, it is the victim of climate change. So I never understood why the discussion always concentrated on mitigation, on the energy side, but water was left out. And this, I think, is now the opportunity when we enter a new era. We can do it. The second point is, and I owe this to David Boyce, who is sitting, my colleague from UNSCAP here. We always forget the workers, yeah, who are dealing with the shit on the ground, yeah, who are doing it, who are repairing pipes, yeah, and so on. So I think they have to come more into the picture and be more represented in the stakeholder community. This will be my very last message, because we will have our last meeting at the end of November. We are just writing up our report. It will not be a scientific report, but it will be our legacy. And it's only 15 pages, so I hope that you all find then a time to read 15 little pages. And I hope that you enjoy it. And well, I enjoyed the work for the last 11 years as a member of the advisory board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we definitely enjoyed dealing with you also. Okay, thank you very much. Big thank you to the panelists. Sorry again for the audience. We're not going to be able to take questions, but I think we have to listen to some logistic instructions, and then we'll go for the coffee. Thank you.